Hello, everybody. Welcome to R-Rated, where today we're going to be talking about the 8th episode of Marvel's What If Ultron won. And right off the bat, this episode is easily one of the best that this show has put together so far. And if nothing else, it gets extra points for taking this anthology series and kind of tying it together. If you haven't seen this episode yet, you should really go watch it before I get into this. If you want my short review, it is very good. It is very spooky. It revitalizes and rehabilitates a few characters and concepts that had otherwise been kind of not done up as well as they maybe could have in certain aspects in the main Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it is creating a very compelling road to the finale, the season finale at least, of What If. So yeah, the premise of this episode is pretty simple. A Nexus event where, for one reason or another, they don't get into specifics, but for one reason or another, Ultron actually manages to retain or reclaim the Vision body that the Avengers, stole from him during Age of Ultron, and is able to use this new, vibranium body to win. The specifics are he kills 4 of the 6 Avengers. He outright has already killed the Hulk while in Hulk form, which is really interesting. Thor appears to be dead. Captain America is definitely dead, and Tony is there, like, pleading with him to not do it, kind of, quote unquote, and that he was made for peace. He was like, "Oh, this will be peace." Kills Tony, and so you kind of see this cascade effect of, well, if Ultron gets Vision, then Ultron is able to beat the Avengers. If he's able to beat the Avengers, then he's able to slowly amass more and more control in his never-ending quest to destroy everything, destroy all life, basically, since his world of machines is controllable and ordered and organized. So Ultron as he has been reborn in What If is really interesting to me. So, if your only experience with Ultron, I've said before, I haven't read a ton of the comics. I've read a few here and there, and I'm like, somewhat familiar with the bigger concept moments in the history of Marvel Comics. So I don't know a ton about Ultron in the comics. I know a bit here and there. I know that Hank Pym is the one who traditionally builds him. I know that there's been time travel plots to defeat him, and some that have recurred into themselves. I think it's Wolverine that goes back in time for the actual Age of Ultron comic series, which has nothing to do with the Age of Ultron movie. Neither does this. This episode, I would argue, skews a little closer to what Age of Ultron actually was, but... And in the episode, they even the Watcher even said, refers to his victory as the Age of Ultron. But so Ultron in the comics is definitely among the more intense and scary villains through the entirety of the MCU. I mean, you have your obvious ones that are like, galactic power spanning or universe rending or whatever, but Ultron is one who generally does not have any of those, super universal powers, who is still very, very powerful and scary and intimidating. And the Age of Ultron movie didn't really capture that in the best way. I didn't hate the movie the same way some people do, but I definitely felt like it was a pretty weak entry overall, and kind of I wouldn't say a misuse of Ultron, but it's definitely something where you're not getting the full impact of that villain in that movie. So here, instead of having Ultron be kind of a vaguely Tony Stark quippy robot, that it's almost this kind of like affable, like you could see him with a glass of brandy swirling it or something. Like in this, they definitely have tweaked the character slightly, probably at least partly in response to people not being the most like, supportive of how he was done in the movies. So for one, he's got Vision's body. So you've got Vision's body with a James Spader sound-alike as opposed to Paul Bettany. So it's very interesting to see a character who most of the time is, a hero and is friendly and is on the side of good, with this very like kind of dry, sarcastic, superior sounding, not superior sounding, but like has an air of like a superiority complex kind of thing. It's a very spooky thing. His eyes are red, and I'm pretty sure Vision's eyes are usually blue in the movies. I think I commented on that before, actually. So it's already odd that he's got Vision's face and body, but also he's got the James Spader-ish sounding voice. It's actually, I believe it's Ross Marquand, the same person who voiced Red Skull in the first episode of the series, but also did the voice for Red Skull in Infinity War and Endgame as the Soulkeeper, the Stonekeeper. So that was kind of interesting that they had that kind of cross thing there, but they definitely cut down on his quipping for the most part. I think there's literally I can only think of one moment where he actually says something that even remotely seems like a quip, and that's when later on he refers to, like, I know that I've already said that like spoilers are going to happen, so maybe I should come back to this. He calls the character creepy in a way that that definitely feels a little bit like the quipping version of Ultron. So he winds up essentially nuking the entire planet. He gets the nuclear codes, and he's already in the internet to start with, so he's able to transmit all of this stuff all over the place, and he fires basically all of the nukes in all of the stockpiles around the world, and the entire planet is plunged into a nuclear winter, and it's bad. The implication is that basically everyone on the surface is dead, with the caveat that Hawkeye and Black Widow were in a Quinjet at the time, so they didn't die. However, this doesn't quite account for, say, commercial airlines that were in the air, of which there are hundreds all the time. So that's at least a few thousand other people who are all above the ground. Maybe even a couple who have the capacity for superheroism. I don't know. This also implies that no heroes had any kind of bunkers. It also implies that the radiation poisoning wasn't going to like mess them up very quickly. Sarah brought that one up as like, the radiation could really, really fuck them up fast. Because it's one thing. So usually like really quick onset radiation poisoning comes from like being right in the presence of a really intense nuclear event. I can't remember the name of it, but during some of the experiments with like nuclear, fusion and fission and all that stuff in Russia, I think it was Russia. It might have actually been in the States. I think it was Russia. It was done in a way that is so unsafe, but basically they had like this very tiny slit, and the nuclear material was inside, and they had the metal plates so that the energy could bounce off of it in every way or whatever, and something slipped, and basically, so my understanding is the way that it worked in order to build up that nuclear energy was these molecules that were being shed, I guess. I don't know if there's probably a better term for that, but all of these isotopes and things are radiating, I guess, like free electrons and other really weird ionic molecules that are very unstable, and they're bouncing off of this metal. I don't know if it's lead, I don't know if it's some other thing, whatever, some weird aluminum alloy thing. But when the plate dropped and completely sealed it, now you have all of that energy completely trapped, even for a microsecond. Like that's going to build up an immense amount of energy quickly and could hypothetically just become a nuclear bomb right there in front of you. But so I think in two separate incidents, like a plate slipped or someone like touched something they shouldn't have, and it does that, and someone like swats it away and it like shuts it all down immediately. And even though the exposure was like fractions of a second, the guy that was right there that slapped it off, that was running the experience, was like, looked around to the couple other people in the room and was like, "I'm really sorry, I just killed us." Like, and they all died. I think one person involved among the, like, between the people involved in those two experiments, one person lived longer than like 3 weeks. He lived for like, I think he lived for like 2 or 3 years, but he had super organ damage and it was really bad and all of that. But even there, where you're in the immediate presence of like an immense amount of radioactivity, it still takes a little while for stuff to really fall apart on you. I don't know how that compares to low-level radiation for extended periods. I'm not an expert on this. I've just, seen some videos and read some stuff. But point being, the planet is very fucked. And as far as Hawkeye and Black Widow know, they are literally the only people left. And they're just trying to take down Ultron at this point. They just want to stop Ultron. Ultron is on other planets. Well, not yet. So as he's standing there observing his handiwork at a destroyed Earth where the human race has been eradicated, in steps Thanos. And for a second there, you're like, oh God, are Thanos and Ultron going to do some crazy shit together? And Ultron just kind of looks at the Infinity Gauntlet with 5 stones and goes, huh, and slices him in half. Just like that. Thanos is dead. Like, that's just the end for Thanos. And he uses his beam to, like, melt the glove and takes the other Infinity Stones, and now he's got all 6 Infinity Stones, which grants him near omniscience. He's able to sense other worlds entirely just with those stones. And so he goes on a crusade across the cosmos, destroying Sakaar and Asgard and the Sovereign. He shows up to Ego with literally this metallic, like, planet, like, miniature. It's basically a metal Ultron moon that he's loaded up with his sentries, and he brings it to Ego, where the swarm of Ultrons just consumes Ego and blows him up. Like, that's kind of a fucked up one, because you start thinking, like, okay, what creatures in the universe could even stand a chance at this point? Ego would be among them. Ego is big enough and powerful enough that he could hypothetically do it, but he's caught off guard, and, like, within literally, like, minutes, he's dead. In the episode, it's shown in seconds, but I feel like there's a little bit of time dilation being shown there. Then he shows up to Xandar, where he starts really fucking shit up, and Captain Marvel shows up, and you're thinking, like, okay, of the heroes on Earth, not even on Earth, of the heroes in the MCU, there are very few that would stand any sort of chance at this point against a fully Infinity Stoned Ultron. I think Ultron Infinity is actually a thing in the comics too, so I'm hesitant to call him that, even though that seems like that would be the most logical, like, name for him at this point. Ultron really loves using versioning for his own names. He's referred to himself in the comics as, like, Ultron 2 or Ultron 5 or all of these things. But Captain Marvel shows up and is, like, basically trying to drag him to the core of the planet Xandar, and it looks for a second like she might have the slightest chance of pulling this off, but he just kind of like, nah, you brought me exactly where I want it to be, and blows up the core of the planet, very much killing her, and he survives. And at this point, the entire universe is completely just empty. Like, we don't know for sure that he's killed every planet, but literally when he blows up Xandar, the explosion is so intense that it blows up other nearby planets. Like, he's done a lot of damage. It's very unclear who is left alive in the universe at this point. So again, I have to say this episode does a really good job of kind of rehabilitating Ultron's really terrifying nature. Like, the fact that the comics have had to develop time travel stories to defeat him should be a good indicator of how intense this stuff gets. Getting to see the just unfathomable power and force behind Ultron with all 6 Infinity Stones is, like, nuts. It's really cool to see. It's one of those things where a lot of stuff that happened in the MCU, if you said 10 years before was going to be a thing, you'd be like, yeah, fucking right. They're never going to do that. They're never going to do a Civil War movie because they're not going to pull all those characters together. That'd be way too ridiculous. What If is kind of an extension of that, where you're like, well, they're not going to do Ultron like the comics. They already did Ultron. It's too late for that. And now we're getting a version of him that's like really goddamn scary and powerful. And it also does a really good job of highlighting the difference between the Avengers' two biggest enemies, Ultron and Thanos, and the difference between Thanos, who his villain story was kind of more, it was a very passive goal. He wanted to snap his fingers, eliminate half the life in the universe, and then that was it. Because he was like, nope, I got what I wanted, I'm out of here. Ultron, and like the version of Thanos in Endgame decides to reboot the universe, mostly because he's annoyed that people are now fucking with him, even for something that he hasn't even done yet. It's kind of it almost comes off a little bit as like, oh yeah, well then I'm gonna do it even more. Like, but even still, he is kind of on this sort of self-imposed holy crusade kind of thing. But when he's done with it, he's just out. He's like, yep, I'm out. That was it. Ultron is very actively seeking destruction of everything. He doesn't have any kind of, goal that he's convinced himself is altruistic in terms of life in the universe. He does have what he thinks is an altruistic goal, which is peace. But peace would be most easily acquired, according to him, by just having everyone be dead. So, yeah. Ultron does a lot of this. He has a really cool new look for this as well. He's got an armor that houses 5 of the Infinity Stones while the Mind Stone is still up top. After he collects the Infinity Stones, so I think the idea was he needed to house them in a way that wasn't directly touching him. So I'm curious if that's going to come up in the final episode, like if stripping him out of his armor may actually do something, but I think it's a little late at this point. But so he basically, he has this armor that looks like his final Ultron body from the movie, more intense. It actually looks a little like Isan the Searcher, who is a giant character who at one point wielded the Power Stone, as you can see in the explanation at the Collector's Vault in Guardians of the Galaxy 1. It looks like he might actually be involved in some way in Eternals also, so that could be kind of interesting. But it's a slightly evocative like armor with that, but it also has like a helmet that lifts up, or it kind of fades away with a little nanotech kind of thing, and the Vision body is inside of there. So it's a really interesting armor. I thought that was a really cool idea, and it kind of solves the problem of, does it count as touching him, or would it matter if it touched him? Because everyone else kind of has issues with holding these things. I guess that's the Power Stone. The Soul Stone, a bunch of people have just held in their bare hand, so maybe not. I don't know if anyone's actually held the Time Stone in their hand. The Tesseract has been a little bit dicey. The Tesseract was dangerous to touch. The Power Stone was dangerous to touch. The Ether was kind of its own anomaly anyway. Anyway, this is beside the point. Which one am I forgetting anyway? The Mind Stone, which was in the Scepter, and yeah. The Ultron armor was really cool. There's a point where Ultron's power, Ultron has this really cool look where he's got this giant, I think it's a double-sided, but it's at least a lance, like a big round style lance, like a jousting lance. And he uses it as like a gun, basically, and that's how he directs his energy. And I'm trying to remember where else I've seen it before, because I thought I'd seen it in some other like movie or anime or something, and the only thing I was able to find from digging around is Galactonite from the Kirby series, which maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But it's a really cool look. It's very let's say domineering, I guess. And there's a point where he uses an attack. He doesn't even use the lance. He just kind of makes it happen where there's this lush, mushroomy, foresty planet that he just kind of, and all of the plant life is just gone, and it's a big desert. Like, it's such a casual move, and it perfectly highlights that level of power that he is very willing to use, and Thanos it's not that he was reluctant to use it. It's just that he seemed to see it as like wasteful or pointless, where he's like, I just want the stones. I'm not trying to destroy whole planets. I just want the stones. I'm going to kill half the people and then I'm out of here. Ultron has complete, total disregard for all of that. He doesn't give a shit. And by the end of this crusade, he's standing on, planetary shrapnel observing the universe. But yeah, Captain Marvel puts up her fight and it was kind of hopeless from the start. The action sequences, there aren't a lot of them, to be fair. I take that back. There's a handful of them, but they're split. Ultron doesn't have a lot of them because there's only so much you can do with that character before it starts to feel a little bit like, okay, we got to go somewhere with this. This can't just be a fight because he would just win immediately. So after Ultron is standing amongst the wreckage of the universe, he's just kind of sitting there and he's like, peace. At last. For the second time, he actually did the same thing after he destroyed Earth. He was like, and then he got the stones. And immediately upon having the stones, he sensed stuff in the universe. He's like, well, time to go erase that too. So now he's got all the stones and he's just sitting there and he's like, there we go. I did it. And the Watcher starts doing his thing and he's like, and so Ultron finally completed his conquest of the universe, and nothing escaped his grasp. And And like as he's doing this, you're watching Ultron just. And the directing is done in such a good way where you're just like, the dread just sinks into your chest right away. Where you're like, oh no, he hears him, doesn't he? He totally hears that because we've seen that before. We saw it in episode 4. What if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? Once he achieves universal, power, he's able to see the Watcher. And now Ultron, with all 6 Infinity Stones and basic omniscience of the universe, hears the Watcher, and he says, who is that? And then the Watcher has this little bit like, and so he ascended to a higher plane, to a never-before-known plane of being. He discovered another. He was able to see the... And then, like, he stops, and the Watcher... And it's so interesting, because, like, the Watcher being flabbergasted for a second is like, oh, that's different. We got that a little at the very end of the last episode, though. Wait, what? As Ultron marches through... and I think the idea is that the Watcher is observing all of these things kind of simultaneously. So these don't necessarily take place before or after each other exactly, but he speaks his lines in a way where it sounds like he's narrating from a teleprompter. Like that's what it comes across as, because he literally stops and he's like, and he discovered another. He saw and the way that he cuts himself off, it's a W. He was about to say the Watcher, and he kind of like reacts as if he's just reading it on a teleprompter that's like, wait, what? That says the Watcher. Really? And I thought that was really cool. Also, over the course of these 8 episodes, the Watcher is definitely becoming more, I don't want to say human, but like he's becoming less stoic and standoffish and all of that. And in this one, he's actively like nervous. We'll get into that a little more in a second, but basically Ultron turns around and is like, I see you. There are other realities. And the Watcher's like, whoop. And he's like, I'm out of here. Okay, I can't see him. He can't see me. I need to figure this out. And Ultron somehow, it's not exactly clear how, breaks through the edge, like through the boundary of his universe into this like prism of infinite possibility or whatever they called it. And Ultron and the Watcher start to fight. And it's pretty fucking cool to see. They start blasting themselves through realities. The Watcher gets this awesome battle gear that I think we've actually seen in the comics. I think it's actually one we've seen recently in the lead up to the war, to the Reckoning War. He has, when he transforms, there's these like big arcs of energy, and they have that same power cosmic, like light with black bubbles kind of look to them, which I think is awesome. The battle is pretty rad. Lots of intense power. It's a really cool, because basically Ultron like mocks the Watcher, being like, you watched all of this happen, all of these realities going horribly wrong, and you didn't do anything. You could have stepped in any time, and you didn't do a fucking thing. And it's like, because you don't have the will to. You don't have the will to save any of these realities. And Watcher's like, you know not the bounds of my will, or something like that. And he starts fighting back, but they start going through a bunch of these different realities. There's one reality that people are saying is very reminiscent of Star Wars, which I guess makes sense. It's all possible universes. Literally means any fictional universe that exists would hypothetically be able to happen in a multiverse, an infinite multiverse anyway. But one of them people have noticed is this volcanic planet, and in the background is a structure that looks a lot like Darth Vader's castle on Mustafar. I don't know, whichever one that is. I think that's the planet where he gets burned in the first place too. But there's that in the background, which is kind of interesting. And there's an offhand Star Wars line that gets dropped later as well, but by Hawkeye. But so they go through all these, and there's one point where he gets dropped on a planet, and then all of a sudden you see this huge Ultron head, coming in from the sky, and you zoom out and he bites into a galaxy like he's biting into an apple. And it's like, that's a really fucking rad way to have like a Galactus moment in all of this. I thought that was really cool. One of the realities has Steve Rogers becoming president, which is something that has happened in one of the What If comic books from years past. So that's pretty cool. And there's a point where Ultron actually begins to overpower the Watcher altogether. Like, he's got his hand on his head and seems to be either breaking him, sucking out his power, maybe both. But the Watcher is able to like knock himself away and escape to another reality. And that's where that story kind of comes to an end for now. While all this is going on, we have this B plot featuring Hawkeye, Black Widow, and another character that they're seeking out in what's left of Earth, an Earth that is swarming with sub-Ultron sentries, and they get a pretty decent action sequence to start. Hawkeye has like a robotic arm, but not like a Winter Soldier arm. This is like a really like roughshod robotic arm. Like, this is some basic stuff. It wouldn't even surprise me if it was implied in universe to be made out of like dummy or something, like one of Tony's robot helpers. Like, it's a pretty basic arm. It does the trick though. He's got his Endgame hair, and they've got these like awesome Road Warrior getups on too. Very solid post-apocalyptic kind of vibe going on. And the goal that they have, they're in Russia. They're trying to find, because they're like, all right, Ultron has taken control of every program on the planet. And it's like, every digital program on the planet. We got one person that we can go to that may be able to help us out. And as they're trying to find the information on this, the Watcher is there, knowing that Ultron is actively trying to break out of his own universe, and he's just like, I could go in, I could see it's the next box over, and Hawkeye's like, pulls out the box, and it's like, I don't give a shit, I'm done. And like, he's like, no, you gotta pick it up. And watching the Watcher freak out like this is really entertaining. And you're just sitting there going like, please, just fucking do it. Just like poke it, make it rattle, something, anything. And then eventually Black Widow goes and finds it and continues. And it's like, thank you for maybe saving the multiverse, Black Widow. Goddamn. So they go and they open up, and it's Arnim Zola in a second backup computer in, I guess, another Hydra base, this time hidden beneath the KGB archives. And they wind up having this plan where it's like, okay, we're going to use this arrow. We're going to embed you into the Ultron hive mind, and then you're going to use your abilities, like as an AI yourself, to completely shut it down. And it's unclear whether this plan would have worked or not. It doesn't, because when they do actually manage to make it happen, Ultron has already escaped the observable universe of that reality. And so the hive mind center is just unreachable at that point. What's weird is the sub-Ultrons are still running on their own, so you'd think you would at least be able to override like the local sub-Ultrons or something. I don't know how that happened, but there's a great sequence of they shoot the data arrow into one of the sentry's eyes, and then it's a matter of, okay, he needs 90 seconds to be able to get in there and send this beacon out. So they're not necessarily trying to protect themselves from the sentries. They're trying to stop this mass of dozens of sentries from grabbing the arrow out of this sentry's eye. So anytime one grabs it, someone shoots one of their arms off or whatever, and they're trying to eventually they drag the Ultron in there. It's a really cool little fight sequence concept where the goals kind of twist around what you would normally expect from a scene like that. So yeah, kind of a tense thing there. It doesn't work. So now they have to escape. So the three of them are now climbing this Dark Knight Rises looking vertical tunnel thing. And actually, what it looks like, I wonder if this was the goal, actually. It looks a lot like the tunnel at the end of Captain America Civil War. And I'm wondering if it's meant to be the same base. Because it's where it does look a lot like it. I bet it actually is. Because it's Siberia. Yeah, no, it's totally that. That's exactly what it is. It's a Siberia. It's not in the KGB archives. It's at the Siberian Hydra base that in the movies houses the other Winter Soldiers, and that's where Baron Zemo. Baron Zemo pits Tony and Steve against each other. So yeah, they're trying to get out of there. And it's a decent action sequence, but these are like 100 sub-Ultron sentries flying upwards. There's no way shooting a couple arrows and guns and things are going to stop them, but they do show off some cool arrow tech. They had a net arrow. They had one that creates this force field, but a couple of them get their hands through and start shooting at them, and so Zola starts shooting back. Like, he's a legitimately good team player at this point. I think he kind of understands it's like, which team we're on no longer matters. We might be the only three things that are left on this planet that aren't Ultron, so none of that animosity matters anymore. So he's helping them in the top half of an Ultron sentry body. He's like blasting them to protect them, and then Hawkeye sacrifices himself. He basically has lost the will to live. He doesn't know what else to fight against anymore, or to fight for anymore. His wife and kids are dead. There's this really beautiful shot of him diving. It's like done diagonally with the light kind of pouring in, and he's like diving down with his arrow towards like one sentry that he shot to this massive sentries, and everything just explodes. It's a really lovely moment, and I think it's meant to be, a dramatic mirror to, a dramatic parallel rather to, Endgame, where he has to watch Black Widow, jump to her death. So I thought that was kind of I listened to the music in that scene, comparing it to the one from Endgame, and I don't think it's the same track. They do sound similar, but I don't know if that was an intentional thing or not. So at the end of this, we've got Black Widow and Zola, the second Zola AI, just trying to find somewhere to hide. And then we kind of fade out. The last thing we fade out on is Ultron having just watched the Watcher leave, and he fades back into the prism of infinite possibility, and everything's red, and he's like, and now the multiverse is mine to eradicate. And it's just like, holy shit, is this where we're going to fade out? And for a second there, it did. And then it comes back up on the Watcher, and he's just like, I have no other choice. And he turns, and in the back, you see all these wobbly woobly arms and this dude with a third eye that closes, and it is Doctor Strange Supreme from the Doctor Strange episode, the one that I gave a 10 out of 10 to. And I guess he goes to Doctor Strange first and says, I need your help. You are the only one, you're the only one that can fight this guy. And it's interesting because Doctor Strange seems to have reverted a little bit. He's definitely got a little bit of his kind of quippy, sort of quick-witted nature back. But he's still obviously very afflicted by the stuff that he's done to himself. And he's just been sitting in this reality by himself for an unknown amount of time. It's unclear when this is to him. But it looks like the last episode is going to be the Watcher and Doctor Strange Supreme, and maybe a bunch of others. There might be a bunch of multiversal Avengers that are coming together for this to fight this infinite Ultron. I love that when you go to the credits, the first thing that's there is also starring Benedict Cumberbatch. I thought that was a cool little thing to have there. So yeah, I had other things that I thought were kind of neat, but the art is really good. The artistry in this, the stuff that's really muted and dead and gray looks really good compared with The multiversal stuff and the reality hopping, all that's really bright and vivid. All of these are really, really cool. I think they did an excellent job with these. So the finale is clearly going to be the Watcher assembling his own multiversal Avengers to take down, Ultron Infinity. I have a couple predictions for the finale title. I usually try to predict because you can usually get some sense of a pattern. I think I've gotten one right. And I think I actually got a penultimate episode right for WandaVision also. I don't think I got it right for Loki I definitely didn't get it right for Loki. I don't think I got it. I might have gotten it right for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I don't remember. I have a couple of them that are like, whatever. Like, oh, what if the multiverse fought back? Or what if the multiverse fought as one? Or what if the Avengers saved the multiverse? Yada, yada. Or what if the Avengers assembled to save the multiverse or something? But the only one that I've come up with that sounds good enough and feels like they usually try to make a meaningful echo in some way with the finale titles. The one that I'm most throwing my weight behind is, what if the Watcher intervened? That would be the one if I had to put money on something, what if the Watcher intervened would be my guess for the title of the final episode of season 1 for What If. Then there's also the question of who could be showing up for this. We could be seeing Captain Carter from the first episode, maybe her Avengers as well. Star-Lord T'Challa could be showing up along with maybe his Ravagers. The third episode's a little rough because like Nick Fury and Captain Marvel are taking Steve out of the ice, but like maybe them could maybe even be Asgard as well, even though they're kind of through Loki taking over Earth. We know Doctor Strange Supreme, and I'm curious if he has the ability to create portals between universes, or is he going to go one step further, and is the Watcher going to give him some element of the power cosmic so he can just do that more easily? The zombie episode, there's obviously our survivors, Peter Parker, T'Challa, Scott Lang. The Cloak of Levitation is still there. I'm curious what'll happen if the Cloak gets to see Doctor Strange all fucked up like this. The zombies could potentially show up just for the sake of trying to overwhelm Ultron, but like I don't know what the benefit there would be since they're repelled by the Mind Stone, and Ultron is primarily inorganic. It's a little wobbly how that works. Technically speaking, Vision is a little like slightly organic. It's kind of weird. It's like organic material laced into vibranium or something. I forget exactly how it worked. Shuri and Pepper Potts from the Killmonger episode, potentially Killmonger and Wakanda and the U.S. Army and a legion of Liberator drones, potentially. There's Idiot Thor, Fuckboy Thor could be among them. Shield and Captain Marvel and Frigga and Asgard could maybe be there. The Space Party could show up. I don't know. And presumably Black Widow, Arnim Zola, and the Watcher are all there. Some of these, I don't expect that all of the previous episodes are necessarily going to show up. I think some of them are. I think we're going to get Captain Carter. I bet we get Star-Lord T'Challa. We're definitely getting Doctor Strange Supreme. I bet we get Fuckboy Thor. I bet we get the ones from this episode. I'm not sure on Shuri and Pepper Potts. I'm not sure on the zombie one. The other one that I'm kind of pulling out of nowhere is I'm curious if some variant of Kang is going to show up here, or is he going to become the replacement villain for season 2, or is it going to just directly tie into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, since this finale is going to be pretty heavily Doctor Strange involved. There's a lot going on here. I think this episode really did a good job of taking an anthology series and making it make sense to have it all suddenly get tied together. It made Ultron into a much more terrifying villain than he's been for the entirety of the MCU. It made the Infinity Stones seem way more intense too, like the littlest amount of effort to completely eviscerate the universe. So yeah, I would give this episode a 9 out of 10. I think it was solid pretty much across the board. There was very little that I didn't like, and it ramped things up really well. Yeah, I really, really like this episode. I'm very excited for the finale next week. I would love to hear what you guys are looking forward to for the finale or for season 2, or what your thoughts were for this episode and for this review. I would love to hear them in the comments below. Comments and the likes and the thumbs up and the subscribes and things. This series has been growing on me a bit, especially since there's been a gradual change in the watcher's behavior. So it's kind of neat to be able to have a story kind of growing out of it. Because the earlier episodes were like, okay, these are neat and all, but they're not really like doing it for me as well, since they all felt so disconnected, and they still kind of are. Like, this is a very convenient way to pull them together, but it is still pulling them together. So that's pretty good, I think. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'm looking for the finale. We'll have to see what happens in what I'm tenuously calling "What If the Watcher Intervened." We'll see what it's titled and see how the finale goes next week. Bye. Also, just for the record, having gone back and rewatched the Killmonger episode, he mocks Rhodey for wearing his U.S. Air Force uniform, saying that he's wearing the colors of your oppressors, or whatever the term that he used was. But he spends the first 10 minutes of the episode almost exclusively wearing his navy whites. So, yeah.